For a brand as prestigious and limited production as Ferrari, the company certainly goes around to replacing their vehicles quite so often, which is why I'm at the 2019 Geneva Motor Show checking out this. This is the replacement for the 488 GTB. This is what's called the Ferrari F8 Tributo. Let's take a first look. So those of you who remember the 488 GTB, I honestly really loved that car. Didn't really have too much experience with the vehicle. It was last introduced in 2014, so you can see 5 years later, this is the replacement called the F8 Tributo. It's Ferrari's mid-engine V8 Italian supercar. You can see the front fascia has a lot of new design cues that Ferrari is introducing on this vehicle that we first saw in the 812 Superfast. You can see the headlights have a much more horizontal look to them. They integrate some new air brake cooling ducts, which are functional. The company also says this particular front fascia, with its new hood scoops and whatnot, makes this vehicle have about 15% more downforce versus the previous generation, which again helps with the performance aspect of this vehicle. Now, as the replacement for the 488 GTB, the F8 Tributo definitely has some big shoes to fill. The side profile has the typical Pininfarina design that Ferrari is known for. It's got 20-inch staggered wheels throughout. The fronts are 245s in the front, 305s in the back. Overall, in terms of the size profile, the 488 GTB was around 174 inches long. I don't anticipate this one to be any bigger or smaller versus the previous generation. It has a very characteristic look to it. A lot of you are going to be instantly recognizing this vehicle as a Ferrari just from looking at the actual profile. Now, when you look at the rear of the vehicle, you can see it sports an all-new design language that we haven't seen on Ferrari since the Berlinetta a few years ago. You can see it also returns the quad taillights at the rear, which are full LEDs. You have a new rear integrated spoiler that kind of goes over the entire rear taillight area with these integrated brake cooling ducts. It's overall a very handsome looking car that I think will do well. I think it looks better than the 488 GTB in the rear, but I think I may prefer the 488 GTB in terms of the front design. Now, underneath that glass cover on the rear deck is a 3.9 liter twin turbocharged V8. It makes the same number as the 488 Pista, which is kind of the track version of the 488. It makes 710 horsepower from just 3.9 liters and 568 foot-pounds of torque. Now, remember, that engine signified a new era for Ferrari because they got rid of the naturally aspirated V8 and replaced it with a turbocharged V8 in its place. Now, performance is still fantastic. Ferrari says 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, and it will reach a top speed of around 211 miles per hour. So stepping into the interior of the F8 Tributo, you can see this is actually my first time in the interior of a Ferrari. I mean, I've driven some McLarens, a couple of Porsches and Lamborghinis, but I've actually never driven a Ferrari. They definitely deserve the prestige that the brand is known for. You can see the interior design. You guys probably aren't familiar with Ferraris in general, but it's got a very traditional look to it. In fact, the dashboard layout looks very similar to the 488 GTB with a couple of key differences. The steering wheel is all new. It's a slightly smaller diameter steering wheel, which Ferrari says helps improve the overall sportier feel of this vehicle. It's got these new circular air vents that replaces the kind of melted look of the 488, which I didn't particularly care for. And then the big change on the passenger side, there's a new 7-inch touchscreen display, which again ups the overall technology in this vehicle. And overall, considering how low and small this vehicle is on the outside, it is relatively roomy in this vehicle. The seats are, again, full leather Alcantara. There's real stitching everywhere. You kind of expect that in a car that costs 6 figures like this. It's got real stitching on the dash, Alcantara, real carbon fiber. The steering wheel controls, again, are new for this generation. You've got the typical turn signal buttons on the steering wheel, which is very strange. Very confusing how they don't use the stock. You've got dual zone climate control, and everything in here kind of moves with precision. It feels really high quality. Even the window switches have a nice, satisfying click to them. Now remember, if you guys are unfamiliar with the competitors this vehicle competes with, it's going to compete with vehicles like the McLaren 720S, Porsche 911 GT3, Lamborghini Huracan, Audi R8, Nissan GTR. So there's a lot of fierce competition in this segment, but as you guys know, most of the manufacturers are going to be going after Ferrari, especially when they're trying to benchmark their competitive set vehicle. Now, no pricing has been announced yet on the F8 Tributo, but Ferrari says they'll be starting deliveries in early 2020. And if you guys look at the pricing of the 488 GTB, that started at $250,000. So I would imagine this thing is going to start probably more than that and easily cost another $100,000 depending on how much you option up this vehicle too. For Redline Reviews of the 2019 Geneva Motor Show, I'm Sofyan Bey.